Arena Mexico, a one-of-a-kind atmosphere with a one-of-a-kind fan base. I'm John Winter with my review of AEW Grand Slam Mexico from Arena Mexico, and boy oh boy, what an incredible atmosphere. The atmosphere was the best part of this particular show. It was also almost a 3-hour tour. Granted, I don't mind the fact that this particular show was a little bit longer because it was a big deal, and Arena Mexico truly is one of the most iconic, one of the most incredible atmospheres for professional wrestling, an arena built specifically for professional wrestling. And man, oh man, these fans, they were into it. They were ready to just see the heels go. They were ready to see the faces win. We even got blood, which means that Tony Khan must have gotten permission because CMLL and really, Lucha Libre in general, they are very conservative when it comes to the rules of professional wrestling, despite the fact that they may just let the tag stuff go. When it comes to certain things like blood feuds and just certain deals, you really have to make sure that you're in good with them. Speaking of people that were in good with others, I do want to briefly mention Dory Funk Jr. passing away. I mentioned this on the Renegade Dark Side of the Ring review that I did, and I would do a full video, but honestly, it's best for wrestling historians to talk about him. I did do one about Terry Funk. I respect the hell out of what Dory Funk Jr. provided for professional wrestling. He was a booker for Giant Baba. He was a long-time reigning NWA heavyweight champion, and even had his last recorded match, I think, in the last few years, and died at the age of 85. What a goddamn career. What a life. He was even in one of the Royal Rumbles, which you wouldn't have expected he would have been in one of the 1990 Royal Rumbles, considering, his age at that point. But truly, Dory Funk Jr. left a hell of a legacy. Now he can join his brother Terry and his dad. And there we go. So yeah, incredible atmosphere in Arena Mexico. And Excalibur, Schiavone, and Nigel on commentary. And I'm just going to say, Schiavone probably needs to stop doing commentary. Excalibur fumbling a lot of stuff. Nigel, pretty much the only pro here. They sung Cope's theme and gave him a big old, hero's welcome. They sung it in English. And that was, it was just nice to just hear how invested they were. They popped for Christian Cage. They even chanted, Poppy, Poppy, he's our Poppy. And then we had the Young Bucks show up, and then the Death Riders, and Mox got a pretty good pop. I will say that much. They really are invested in a lot of what AEW does, while also respecting the traditions of the people that they love. And they did hate Yuta, so at least Arena Mexico has some taste, Yuta and Garcia, these two amoeba-sized little string beans that, quite frankly, don't deserve to grace the halls of Arena Mexico because they're not any good. They gave up on the rules 1 minute in. Big surprise. It's an AEW show. The double 619, there was certainly an attempt, I'll say that much. Yuta and Garcia are terrible. They are genuinely terrible. They have had way too much television time wasted on them. So we get a collision. Cope gets rolled up by Mox, I believe, 1, 2, 3, and there we are. Alright, so speaking of Mox, let me briefly touch on this, because the match was what it was. It was a good atmosphere, but it was an 8-man tag featuring people that do understand the rules, and then a lot of people that just don't care. And Yuta and Garcia who don't know any better. So, the stuff, in regards to WWE SummerSlam, Night 1 and 2, particularly Night 2, because of Rollins and Reigns. These two stayed. They didn't leave WWE, and, that's why they're the best of this particular era or generation. I don't believe that Michael Cole's smart enough to try to come up with something witty on his own. He's pretty goddamn stupid, so that line was probably fed to him. Look, I'm all for pot shots being taken, because that's the thing. The Monday Night Wars, all that, 83 weeks for WCW, the back and forth stuff. But I don't feel it was necessarily mean-spirited, and I'm not the biggest fan of Jon Moxley as far as his work and stuff like that. I don't mean him as a person, but just his work. I don't really care for his matches. In fact, I kind of despise a lot of his matches. I despise a lot of his promos. I'm sick of Renee. I don't even want to see her. But that being said, Moxley still did give a lot of his years to that company. And at times was booked pretty well, and other times was booked like absolute shit. And was, fought through a pretty deadly, injury and infection, that kind of stuff. I believe there was a point where he was worried that, something was going to happen with his elbow, if I remember right, because I think he had a couple different elbow injuries, but he had stuff where he was out for a number of months, and, it was touch and go. And he also battled some issues and got over those, thankfully, in AEW, but he did give a lot of years to WWE. And I think him, Reigns, and Rollins have a healthy respect for each other. I would imagine they do. Whether they do or not is their business. But yeah, WWE kind of looking a little bit petty, and also probably should worry more about themselves, like the fact that they barely got, 70,000 between both nights for SummerSlam, in like US Bank Stadium. They probably should worry more about that, and the fact that things seem to be eroding from within as far as how TKO is running things, even with the great talent. No, they're not going to go out of business. No, it's not like they're never going to be the standard bearer. They are. They are the most established. But quite frankly, Mox still gave a lot of his life to WWE. Probably more than that company deserved, given how, Vince McMahon, the dirty pervert that he is, decided to book him in the last year or so. That being said, I'm still sick of the Death Riders. I want to see the Death Riders, just evaporate off my television for good. We get Omega and Ospreay recaps. And I'll just mention it right here. The Continental Cup thing. We have a 16-man tournament where names are drawn out of a hat. Nothing up sleeve. Presto! Terrible Bullwinkle impression. I'm sorry. Still better than the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie that came. That was an actual movie in 2000. I think it was 2000. Nevertheless, the Continental Cup thing. So the idea is whoever wins gets a trophy and the championship. So Moxley's going to defend his championship there, and I'm just like, okay, I thought that was the whole point of the goddamn Continental Classic. Why are they doing this? Are they eliminating the Continental Classic? Why do this? Is this a way to get the title hopefully off of Moxley and onto somebody good? Don't you dare give it to Orange Cassidy. God forbid, I will just throw shit on the goddamn review if that happens. Me and my, one-man crusade against everything stupid. But God, they need to get the title off of Moxley. But really, they couldn't have just done... I don't know why. Tony Khan loves tournaments. It's a little bit excessive. I don't know who's going to win. I don't really care. I know the Collision's going to be live this week in Colorado Springs, and we're going to have like 3 matches. Well, 2, because Orange Cassidy's in one of them. But whatever. Maybe Eddie Kingston will get to the finals. I don't see Nigel McGuinness doing that, because if Nigel McGuinness manages to face Jon Moxley, even if he wins, what's he going to do? Give up the Continental title and we're going to have another tournament? They've booked themselves into a corner. Anyway, Ciampa had U.S. flag stuff on him, and a huge pop for Andrade. My goddamn goodness. Andrade versus Commander versus Ciampa. And the winner is the number 1 entrant in the Casino Gauntlet at All In for a future AEW World Title shot. Is that wordy? Yes. Yes, it is. Carlos Cabrera is still alive. I'm just as shocked as everybody else. Ciampa was a clear heel. Commander dove a lot. I could do those dives. I'd land with the same thud and not get back up unlike Commander, but I could do that. So anyway, and there's a beauty that took a picture with Andrade, my word. And then Andrade's pants go. Somebody a very good friend of mine suggested gimmick pants. The problem is, with what he's smuggling, they probably would rip the pants inadvertently. 3 Amigos, Eddie chants, and then Ciampa attacks the pants and does that. And I'm sorry, people can find that funny, but that just proves that Ciampa is never going to get out of the stupid stuff, even though I want him to be taken seriously. So, he does a picture of his dick at one point, a picture of his own DIY. It's a good thing that was a planter, otherwise he would have been in a lot of trouble. So, we get a Poison Rana, and then we get a Shooting Star Press later by Commander, right after that, but then the DM 1, 2, 3. So, okay, Commander got pinned. And Andrade basically says he wants more gold. He will win it for his hometown of Mexico. That's for Shivani right there. And, yep, it's like, you think I can't win? How you know? And then suddenly, MJF's music. And my God, MJF is back after almost a month being off. I don't know if he was filming a movie or just rehabbing, because I know he was mentioning his knee was really hurting in a Brian R. Solomon interview, and I would imagine that maybe the reason they took the title off of him was to give him a chance to rest. But he then attacks Andrade, gets the diamond ring back, bloodies him up. He has the triple B, by the way, whatever the heck it is. The blueberry bastardized, brothel. I don't know what the hell it is. And he took the ring bang. He just destroyed Andrade, bloodied him up, and calls the country trash and all that. And the fans call him a pero, which I believe is a dog or a bitch. And he wants, in the Casino Gauntlet, the number 2 spot. He will wrestle next week. And then he will win it because he is the one true champion, the OTC as it were. At least MJF shows up. So anyway, Divine Dominion and Mercedes Moné took on Willow Nightingale and the Brawling Birds. And it was a match. It wasn't a bad match. It just had to have the rules thrown out. Megan's tan made her darker than the referee. And I refuse to stop acknowledging that until she lays off the spray tank, because it's off-putting. They did moves, they did stuff, the crowd was into it, I'll say that much. I really do hope they don't take the title off of Willow, but after she pinned Mercedes with a backslide, and by the way, Mercedes has beaten Willow before. She beat her to start her TBS title run at Double or Nothing 2024, if anybody remembers right. So, yeah, Mercedes ended up, getting pinned, which worries me that they're going to cut Willow off at the knees. They really shouldn't. They should have Willow at least go to World's End, if not, say, Revolution as champion. Then she could lose it. And then during the celebration, Jamie Hayter was dancing. She could keep dancing like that all she wants. My word, what a woman, to quote Toni Storm. Where is Toni Storm? When is Toni Storm going to come back? Speedball took on Kyle Fletcher for the AEW International Championship. They both had lucha masks. Kyle stepped on his. The crowd was into it. Bailey got, hurled, long darted into the goddamn barricade. That looked very, very painful. That's what he gets for wearing genie pants. They did highly athletic shit. Kyle was overconfident. That led to Bailey gaining his hope spots and everything. They went to the stage. I see they were trying to ramp up the tension, as it were. And then we get an apron bomb and a brainbuster. 1-2 kick out. Finishers mean nothing. More on that here later. Ultimate Weapon for 2. And then it's kick or be kicking. And eventually Bailey got hit with a kick and then hit with the corner brainbuster. 1, 2, 3. I know it sounds like I glossed over. It was 15 minutes, and it wasn't the most offensive thing that I've seen. It didn't go forever. I'm not the biggest Speedball Bailey fan in the ring. I don't hate them as a person. But Bailey can do good stuff. But Fletcher should be the guy that they focus on. But then Okada comes out for the next match, which is Okada, Hechicero, and Kevin Knight against Darby Allin. I didn't know it was safe to have Darby and his, IED, love near Mexico City, taking on teaming up rather with Chris Jericho, who was back to his old, CMLL days, where he decided to wear tight shorts instead of long pants, and yeah, he just is physically washed. But the standout here was Mystico, getting that lavish entrance, that long entrance, and my God, I think he's just a tiny bit over, folks. I think he's just a tiny bit over in Arena Mexico. In all seriousness, my God, Mystico got a hero's welcome. So Jericho might as well be called Lion Shart Chris Jericho. Yeah, it was what it was. Knight attacked Darby at the start, and Aubrey lost all control within 5 seconds. And I love Aubrey, and Aubrey's an effective referee, but they don't make any of the referees effective here. Okada does one good spot. He stopped Darby with a drop kick on a dive. And if he had moved any slower, he would have been going back in time. Back in time. It was a mess. It was a fucking mess. But people, they were booing every time Mystico even got a little bit brutalized. We get 2 submissions, including La Mystica, and then a coffin drop on Kevin Knight. 1, 2, 3, which will probably lead to an exploding coffin match at All In. Watch them do that. Watch them do that. And I'm going to hate myself for calling it. Statlander took on Persephone. I don't remember if this was for Persephone's championship. I believe the CMLL Women's World title. I don't know if it was for that. I don't know if she is the Women's World Champion. Because there's too many belts. Persephone looked great, so Statlander. Thunder Rosa is right there, speaking of looking great. Is there in the crowd. She's a CMLL National Champion. And there was a lot of in this ring and at ringside. Persephone really did an impressive dive, just landing right there on Statlander. Full force. Right there. Why isn't that me? Statlander slipped a little bit later and on the 450, and I don't know if it was a miscue or what, but it's just Statlander had 2 back-to-back ACL injuries. She's been able to avoid the injuries for now, but I'm worried, and in all honesty, I think she needs to take that out of her arsenal. It's impressive she can do it. It's also like when she did that, that backflip into that, whatever that was supposed to be off the apron. It seems like a great idea in execution, and it looks pretty, but it's not really effective. Persephone then fights with Thunder Rosa because this match needed more distractions. And then Persephone hits Rosa with her title to the head. The referee takes a bump from Statlander. Oh no, getting laid out by a beautiful Amazonian woman. Who would want that? And then Sheeta eventually gets in the ring. Kinda. Stumbles just getting under the bottom rope. Good job there. And Statlander got stopped, and then a frog splash won it. And, okay, Rosa versus Persephone when? Probably pretty soon. They were light on promos, I'll say that much, and that was kind of refreshing. So, Brodito, Brody King, and Bandito, and Hangman with his perm, along with a midget. I don't know the name of the midget. I think it's Ketamine. I think that was his name. Took on the demand. Trevor the Bald, Bishop Khan, and Toa Leona. It's the AEW Trios Championships. Randy Newman was right about short people. He's absolutely right. Punt them. What? I know they're popular. I don't care. Punt them. Pull a King Kong Bundy and a little beaver. That is not a euphemism. So it's a total mess. There was one impressive spot where Toa Leona managed to lift all 3 guys for a Samoan drop. And that's impressive, especially with Brody, because Brody's a big lad. That was every bit of about 700 pounds right there. Close to it. Or, 600 something, but nevertheless. And then a Buckshot 21 Plex won it. The midget at least looked like he was laid out at one point, so that was at least something. And I know you're not supposed to call them midgets, but when you can reach stuff off the top shelf, then I'll stop talking down to you. So there we go. New Trios champions. Hangman was one of the Trios champions before, and then he wasn't. It just, whatever. At this point, the stipulation didn't bother me about him not being able to challenge for the world title, but it was what it was. He just, I guess he's this champion. They got nothing better for Bandito and Brody King to do. Also, Trevor the Bald, this is his fault. But you know what? Let's just blame the midget. I always blame the midget. You don't trust a midget. You never know where they've been. It's like I understand that that midget Ketamine was backstage reading a book, trying to learn English. What was the book? Little Women. If you know what pay-per-view that's from, I love you guys. Will Ospreay and Mark Davis took on each other in a Mexico street fight where everybody was banned from ringside, but they lied to us because all the fans were still there. You lied to us. The camera crew was still there as well. Granted, they wouldn't have been able to film it, but given some of the stuff in this match, I might have preferred that. So they love Will Ospreay. There was a jump start. There was also a chair with wire on it because that's what you bring to a Mexico street fight. Look, I understand that they tried to juice this thing up and then they actually both got juice later, but still. We got a tire. That tire had almost as little tread as my last X. And we get chairs, a trash can to Will's head. And then there was a point where a guy literally steps into frame to catch Will Ospreay. It wasn't a plant. Oh, I see. It's okay for them to mention horticulture and Hispanics, but if I did it... So that being said, I'm sorry, but just they did everything they could to try to make this a blood feud, and the crowd was into it. But they were at the entrance. There was a piece of particle board or whatever broken over Will's head. Doesn't matter. I don't really think he's going to get hurt because he's associated with people like Paul Robinson. I believe that's his name. Will bled. They must have needed permission or must have gotten permission because CMLL and Mexico in general, they're pretty conservative with that stuff. And then we get a fork. And if you want to know exactly where I decided to tune out of this goddamn match, it's a fork. Abdul the Butcher doing it was stupid, but at least back then it sort of made sense. The Sheik doing it made sense because the match also only lasted maybe 6 to 7 minutes. It didn't last 20. And then we get Wire. Mark bled as well. This was going wire to wire with my patience. So yeah, that incredible pile driver that Mark Davis hits. It looks deadly. It looks, it doesn't look sloppy. It just looks like it could literally kill somebody. But of course it's a 2 count because finishers mean nothing. That move should always be used to end a match. If you can't have it end the match, don't do it. And now there's wire to the head, no wire hangers. God, if only some of the people would, use those, we might have had less stupid people on this show. And a hidden blade, 1, 2, 3. Will Ospreay won. It was an incredible atmosphere. I have my usual criticisms of AEW. And we are on our way to All In. And apparently, Wrestle Dream is in Orlando. We are not going to get any more shows this year, my state. And you know what? That's good. I really hope we don't. You know why I hope we don't? Maybe we'll get Revolution. I'm not necessarily certain, but I gotta be perfectly honest here, guys. I'm starting to have some issues with AEW and some real issues that are really starting to grate on me. They were minimized here, but I fully expect a lot of that stuff to just come bubbling back to the surface. I really hope All In does the right thing, several right things. I just fear that we're going to take a few steps backwards. But until then, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Wrightlin. I do want to say very quickly that I did a movie review recently. It was a special screen of Ice Cream Man, the new Eli Roth film, if you want to call it that. Because I saw that early feedback for it wasn't all that great and decided why not. Last one I did before that was Masters of the Universe, and it has become my most viewed video of 2026 despite the reduction in production. Yes, intentional rhyme because I have the time. I just want to thank you guys still for tuning in to the channel and watching the Dark Side of the Ring stuff and the occasional wrestling stuff that I do. And I try to entertain you guys. And I do want you to know I will still post when I can. But if I burn the candle at both ends much longer, I'm going to get to the point where the wick is basically going to, just be snuffed out. And I'm not going to be able to light again. That being said, still, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Do not watch The Ice Cream Man, by the way. Don't watch. It's terrible. Watch Pinocchio Unstrung if it's on digital. Watch Evil Dead Burn. There's a lot of great horror to watch, but don't watch anything by Eli Roth, at least anything recent, because the man's an idiot. But you can check out my review of that to see what I really thought. But nevertheless, until we see what AEW brings us again, happy trails to you.